like I say, it's kind of weird. It's kind of funny. It's kind of weird. The Once you start the thermal reaction process on an LSL shell, basically the inner shell, the inner rod, the inner bar of steel, the inner thing of steel, will will start to decay, and basically it's a fast decay, right? So as it's decaying, it basically all those little particles go into the round cylinder on the outside. But the round cylinder on the outside acts as a shield. There's nowhere for it to go. Most of those particles just sit there and go, and they gain in heat. So it's like it's like a and basically the steel on the outer ring basically becomes white hot violently, and it starts breaking down and losing its molecular bonds as well. So in between where the steel, and so basically it becomes this molten like and basically and slowly but for surely that also caused the uranium rod to decay as well. So basically, the outer steel becomes like white hot, and it's giving off radiation. It's giving off light particles. It's giving off all kinds of shit. But basically, the metal on the outside becomes pretty much, well, it explodes. I mean, it basically explodes, leaving nothing. And eventually the uranium rod, which is the more dense object, becomes becomes red hot too. It becomes red hot, and basically the outer metal becomes like basically vaporized pretty much. So the outer metal becomes vaporized from all these particles, and these particles are bouncing around basically inside, and they gain in energy until they can finally go out. Because like I said, when a particle will hit a piece of metal, dink, and then it'll hit another piece, and then it'll change direction and go dink, basically. So the only way for the particles to really get out, because it's within a metal ring, basically, is the front or the back. So mostly, for the most part, those particles go out the two sides. They don't really get out the actual metal ring. So it's relatively safe around. It's mostly dangerous to be in front or behind one of these things, basically. But pretty much at a certain point, the outside metal ring becomes molten. So those particles can finally, the particles that do escape are going really fast. So they're like crazy, because they've been bouncing around within this little bitty space, because they've gone from here to 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 here until they're moving so fucking fast at millions, billions of speed, until they can finally push their way through the metal and out into the world, which basically meant that everybody within 3 miles of one of these shells, basically little bitty pieces of metal. They like when they looked at the people with a microscope, what they saw was little bitty holes all over their bodies. Little microscopic holes, like yay big. They looked okay, but little holes about the size of, a molecule, basically. And what that was one of those groups of one of those uranium particles, or one of those dense particles, had finally forced its way out of the steel shell and basically gone. So when Zachary fired off that shell, those things started going until they finally went. Anyway, some of them actually get lodged in the metal ring. Anyway, it's all complicated. It's all physics, but basically, a lot of particles go like this until they can finally go out. Basically, the first set of particles go up, or they either bounce back or they stick back in the metal. The second set of particles go up, and they either bounce back or stick in the metal. Anyway, and basically, it goes like this until it gets down to the center core. But basically, pretty much a lot of particles basically go. So everyone, they even looked at the vans. They looked at the vans, all the cars, all the equipment, the sound equipment mostly stopped working too. It's something ridiculous like that. Everything had these microscopic little holes in them. Little bitty holes in everything. All the hot girls, all the bikinis, everything had these little bitty microscopic holes. Zachary killed everyone there when he pressed that trigger. They had no idea what the starlight shell did. They didn't understand it. They knew it was radiation, but they didn't know. They didn't understand. And it was a big party, and like I said, they tracked the particles. They tracked the holes. They went and looked all around, all the stands. Everything had these little bitty microscopic holes. Anyway, the camera. Anyway, I don't know. It's on video. You can look it up. Look up Bill Gates. Look up Zachary. Look at the party. It's all on film, or at least what is of it. There's a report on it, basically, and the first time the starlight shell was ever shown. Basically, I knew, the Germans knew, everybody who knew anything about those shells would know what those shells would do and what they were. Never to be used on a planet. Anyway, they had a cannon. They thought that that'd be cool to show off this shell. Yeah. It went through brick walls. It went through everything. Everyone died. Everyone. And Zachary was the trigger man. He killed 250,000 people. Or more. I'm not sure exactly how many people he killed. But when he pressed that button, when he pulled that trigger, Lil Zach became a mass murderer. Anyway, a lot of people thought it was cool because, I mean, all those people were dead and they could, well, the parents were pissed. But anyway, because they thought their little girls and little boys and friends and people and children were just going to a party. They didn't know they were going to use a starlight shell. It's one of my shells, but so, I mean, I would have told, like, anybody who knew anything. But like I said, they just found a box in a warehouse that was dusty, or a museum that said Lsls on it. And they could fit into a cannon. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know where it had come from. Anyway, Lucifer star, creation of stars. Anyway, though, so yeah, so without me being around or any knowledge, they basically started using them, or they used it. They didn't know how it was made. They didn't know where it was made. They didn't know when it was made. They just had it. And they used it. First, they killed their friends. Then they killed other people. Anyway, yeah, you know, it's on documented record. You can probably look it up, basically. Those shells were nearly unstoppable. Like I said, they would melt a hole in the ground until the reaction stopped. And it would stop, though, eventually. A little ways, a couple 100 feet down or something like that. But basically, it's the same theory. It's not really a nuclear reactor. It's a nuclear reaction, a slow nuclear reaction. Anyway, very dangerous, and anybody who knew about them would have told them, you're fucking nuts, kid. Somehow they'd gotten one, broken into a warehouse and stolen them or something like that. And anyway, they planned to be the life of the party. And they were the death of the party. One way to kill a party. Anyway, yeah. So, anyway, the cover-ups, stuff like that. It was just an accident. They tried to say it was the U.S. government or there was something. It wasn't anything like that. It was just one really stupid kid. A couple of really stupid kids that had no idea what an LSL was. LS was. Just the lettering, and they tried to kind of figure it out, but they didn't understand it. Like, I don't even know if they knew about radiation, and they had stolen it, so they didn't really want to tell anyone about it, so they just thought that they would just use it. Anyway, they figured it was a shell just like everything else. So, yeah, 1940s, 1950s, you could look it up. Basically, when Zachary was about 20 years old or 15 years old or something. Is when it first made its debut.